All right, now I've got it so you can see that we're recording.
Oh, okay, great.
So we're recording now. I'll edit it all up though.
All right.
But, all right, sweet. So we just did 45 minutes, and now we're gonna do it again. All right. So Jamie, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate it. I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit and kind of talk about my role, talk about the team. Talk about the casino project and where we're going with it, and just kind of get where your head's at and talk about both the future for me and for my team. So thank you for taking the time today.
Definitely, Allison. I know that this meeting you've been waiting to hear back about your performance and things along those lines, and so I'm excited to have this discussion with you and get your feedback about things. And along the same lines as you, I'm looking to talk about how your experience has been in this role and how you think your team has welcomed you in as a manager and how that transition has been from programmer to manager, and whether or not you feel you've gotten the support and resources that you need to succeed, as well as get an update on the casino project and evaluate if it's on track with the original plan, and make sure that we have inclusion of all of the team, as well as talking about our relationship and how I could serve you best in your role.
Great. So I mean that's quite a lot, right? So I guess first we should probably talk about where I'm coming from, like where the last few months have been, last like half a year or whatever it's been. It hasn't been the strongest. I feel like I've actually really quite struggled a bit at being a manager. I found myself kind of rolling back into the role of a developer and not really managing.
So why do you think that you've been having the tendency to do that?
Yeah.
And how do you think you could adjust that going forward?
Yeah, so good question. I think that the reason that I've been doing that is I feel like I've felt as a manager that I've been isolated by the other managers, because I was running with this project, and we had a brainstorming session. Everybody was great. It was cool. Everybody was on point, and I was going to run with the project. And I reached out to get some feedback from our marketing department to kind of figure out what the landscape there looks like in the casino world. So they reached out and did a little bit of a landscape analysis for me, and I directed all of our efforts at that, and come to find out that the other managers really didn't like it, and they gave their feedback, or everybody gave their feedback, and it was just really negative and really not very constructive at all, and so that really pushed me more into like a bubble, right? And then the stress of really pushing my team to get this project out and on time out has really, I took the pressure as a note that I should really dig into it and get it done, rather than delegating. And that's something that, I hold on me. I really should have delegated more. I should have not gotten into it. As far as the programming goes, I should have really taken a step back and looked at the big picture. But that's where I'm at with all of that.
So a few things I was thinking of as you were saying those things.
All of that stuff, yeah.
And so we'll try to break it down bit by bit and go slowly through it, because you said a lot.
Yeah.
So first, as far as your direct team goes, I'd like to know, you've been clear that you didn't delegate enough and you kept slipping back into the programmer role. How do you anticipate changing that going forward? Like, do you feel like you have the resources you need for your team? Or is their what's their workload like?
Going forward, I don't think that we have enough resources, quite honestly. I think that it would be good if we could leverage some of the other teams' talent, if they have it available. And I think going forward, I think that I need to, quite frankly, need to take a step back and get a little bit more experience, whether that means reaching out or taking extra courses or something above and beyond the role itself. I'd love to talk to you about it, have one-on-ones with you more often if we could do. Yeah, so there's that.
Okay. Well, you and I both know that putting you in this role was a big jump, given that you didn't have any prior managerial experience, and you were fairly new. And I've been so busy with so many other projects, I haven't necessarily been able to lend the support and guidance that you probably needed given your experience level. So that's definitely something that I want to help you with.
Great.
With increased one-on-ones, and also provide you with a probably professional coach who can really dig in deep with you and move you along quickly to practice those new skills and really strengthen and solidify them. So as far as your relationship with your colleagues go, and having received negative feedback regarding the program and feeling like isolated, perhaps, like you said, you felt like you were in a bubble. Looking back, how do you see yourself working with that group on this project and other projects when you feel like maybe the feedback you received hasn't been helpful?
Yeah, feedback was definitely not helpful at all. It was negative. It was a little bit misogynistic and condescending, and that's not here nor there. That's already happened. We're not going to fix it now. But moving forward, and this is something that struck me as odd, is that Chris's team is now working on the project, and I didn't have any idea about that. But I feel like there's a lot of lack of communication in the company. I think that we need to really open up that tunnel and that forum so that everybody knows what the heck's going on with everybody else. Because I mean, a little bit of blame is on me for that. I didn't reach out and build those bridges, and when some ideas were brought to me, may or may not have been a little bit harsh about them. But yeah, I mean, if we could have that communication, then we could get past the initial shock of whatever their suggestions are and get down to the reason why they're suggesting that,
Okay. Well, let's dig first into the casino project.
Right.
And how the casino project can be moved forward successfully and timely and on budget. So you think that this project is working with Chris's team?
Yeah, one of the other managers has it right now.
I'm sorry, I just have to look at my notes real quick.
Yeah.
Because I do want you to start working with another manager on this project,
great.
so that we can make sure we're moving things along. And it just slipped my mind whether it was Chris's team or another team, and I knew this the first time we recorded.
The first time that we recorded.
So I do want you to start working with him, and I think it'll be great for you on multiple levels. I think it'll be great for you to build your collaboration skills with mid-level tier managers, and to build those relationships, because I know that they haven't necessarily felt valued or involved in this project since the retreat. They all were very excited about this, as it's a really cool project, and we're hoping that their ideas might be implemented more. I don't believe, I don't believe any of the ideas that were shared have been implemented, and I think perhaps that sends a message in and of itself to your peers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's something that, you really have to think about hard. It's not always about having things the way you want them. It's also about building a consensus and a community so that everyone feels like they're part of this project. Because also when you go to another team and you say, do you have anyone that could assist with our overload, they're much more likely to provide those resources if there's a shared interest. And they know that you'll help them if they need it, and they will help you if you need it. So, there's a lot more to it than just hearing ideas. So, on that same note, you are down 2 programmers. So I think it's imperative that we get those positions filled as soon as possible. But we need to figure out how you're going to lead your team to avoid more turnover, and how we're going to ensure the satisfaction of new members coming in.
So I think that's certainly kind of the root, right? This is the crux of the situation, where I need to really build that confidence from my team in me as a manager. So moving forward, yes, definitely number one. Well, one of the biggest points, right, is to hire 2 new developers so that my team isn't stressed. In the meantime, I'd like to maybe lean on you a little bit if you could ask the other managers where, hey, maybe they can help me out. Because right now might not be the best time for me to go asking them, right? So maybe I could lean on you to ask them that. Also, I think that we could open up kind of like a weekly discussion with my team, and we could all have a whiteboarding session or a event about Allison session, where I'm not there. They can come up with ideas. They can flesh everything out. They can get everything out on the table and actually have that creative time almost. And then, we can regroup and come back together as a team to build that colleague and respect foundation. And then, down in the future with my team, what I want to do is really do some team building exercises, really kind of build that enjoyment in the team and positivity, rather than we work too hard and nobody gets recognition type mentality that exists now.
So let's say, for instance, when your team has that creative session, and then there's a regrouping where you're involved, how do you foresee them delivering that, and how are you going to be receiving it, and how are you going to delegate it at that point, and how are you planning on overseeing it? I know some of this depends probably if it's a casino project or a separate project, but I want you to think about, if something's not necessarily something that you would have gone with for an idea, how are you going to let your team creatively execute on their ideas?
I think that's really valuable. I think that the best way to do that is come up with a consensus. So we come back, regroup, and then we come up with actionable items out of their ideas, right? Things that we could all agree on, maybe 1 or 2 out of the conversation a week, if even that, right? But we all vote on it. We all have our input on it. And we come to a consensus on it. And if we can't come to a consensus, then maybe we shelve it for another week, and we let it build a little bit further in our minds. But then we assign somebody to the task as a lead on it, not necessarily responsible for the whole development of that feature or function or piece of the application. But we have somebody who's a lead on it and has ownership on the team over that. And then we can have our separate projects running in that way, so that everybody has ownership over parts of the application and comes together as a whole in the team. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Has the team had issues with timeliness? Is that why you were falling back into the programmer role? And if so, how do you recommend mitigating that.
Yeah, so you certainly, and I think you knew as good at probably. Certainly one of the reasons that I got into going back into the development of the software rather than delegating, and that's on me. I should have reached out for help, but I think that I just didn't really realize that I could do that. But I think in order to mitigate that in the future, that's going to take a little bit of leaning on you and building those bridges with my peers, my colleagues, and the other teams. Maybe they have resources, talent that's not being utilized that I could bring in for just a small piece of code that they need to write to help get us over the ledge, right? Mm-hmm. So that we don't have one tiny little roadblock stopping the entire application from moving forward. We can come together as a company and get that done. So I think that that's something that I should really do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
What ideas do you have for building relationships with your managerial peers? Some of the ideas that I have are for you to look back at your notes as to what suggestions were made for the casino project,
mm-hmm. Okay.
and perhaps even other projects that are still in development that may be applicable to, and reconsider the ideas that were shared and have conversations with them as to why they think this would be good, and kind of just to share their thoughts about it. But on that same note, that reminds me that I wanted to backtrack just a minute to the casino project as a whole, and your request to marketing for the industry landscape information or data. So I was surprised when I got a call from the VP of marketing telling me about your request, because usually when there's external requests to other departments, they go through me first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So,
okay.
And I mean, that may partly have been because, I haven't necessarily given you all of the protocol and procedures of the company, and this is your first time in the role, so you wouldn't necessarily know that unless I shared that with you or someone told you. So, but I just would like going forward for you to,
certainly.
to communicate with me what your needs are, and if you feel other departments could be of assistance, then we'll work together to achieve that. But at that time, marketing was quite stretched as far as their resources, and actually the scope of what was requested is not entirely accurate of what we're trying to design. So I'm not sure if it's come to your knowledge yet or not, but although the industry in Las Vegas for vacationers are families, the online gambling industry is not. As you could imagine, I don't think I'd want my 8-year-old playing the online poker and everything else.
That makes sense.
It's actually our target audience is young single men. So, given that, we have to create an aggressive timeline and strategy to make sure we can rethink this casino program and rework it. So that's why I believe that, I can't remember if it was Chris or Scott, I'm sorry, is going to be working with you on this project as well as your team to revisit with all of the managers and your team and kind of not start from scratch, but backtrack quickly and then move forward quickly so that a lot of other team members' ideas will be included. I'm not sure if you're aware, but a lot of the managers are gamblers, and they're part of a poker club. I think that'd be a great opportunity for you to kind of build a relationship with them. Maybe I'll work on
asking them.
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, and I think that it would be fun for you to, see what it's like and
them,
and get their feedback on that. They can have a lot of fun ideas that I think would be helpful to the audience that we need to reach.
Cool. So going back to working with Chris's group, I'm just going to say it's Chris's group. I think the best plan of attack, and let me know what you think of this, is getting our two teams together, sitting down, having the fundamentals of the game up on the wall, right? What we have today. And then we can build out different positives and negatives. What do we want to keep? What do we want to scratch? Right? So that we all come together on a consensus of where to go forward. So we don't necessarily scrap everything, unless we need to. But if we have the fundamentals, if we have the skeleton of the application, and all we have to do is add on different images or different features, and that's a lot better than rebuilding the whole thing. So I think that's going to be my takeaway for the first step.
And how are you going to handle it if there is not consensus?
That's a good question. I think if there isn't consensus, I don't know that we should include it, because if not everybody agrees with it, then maybe that's not something that people would feel passionate about including in the game. Does that make sense?
Or maybe it's worth shelving at the moment.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Meeting with Chris and I separately.
Yeah.
To consider those ideas and see.
Or send it out to the broader audience and ask the other members, the other managers, what they think.
Yeah.
Right, and see.
So we could do something like that.
Cool.
So people feel as though they're being heard and their
definitely.
ideas are being considered.
Yeah, we're not going to toss anything out. We'll shelve everything. If it's not in there, it's still viable. Unless it's just completely absurd and Tyrannosaurus Rex playing cards. But anyway, the next thing I want to do is talk about monthly meetings with all the managers. Because I think the communication is a real problem that we have. I think that, I didn't know that reaching out to the marketing team required some consent, talking with you first. I didn't know that. My bad. Probably should have asked you before I did anything. But I think that's an example of communication. I didn't know that Chris's team was going to be working on this. So that's, and when I found out, I felt like that was something that was done behind my back. So that's a communication thing. So I think that we need to, as a group, as a team, really kind of build that communication a lot. Whether that be some kind of like a monthly meeting, or some kind of like a Slack or some kind of online tool, desktop-based tool that we can use to communicate, have chat rooms, just so that we have the vehicles that we can talk to each other, really kind of foster the idea of communicating back and forth. What are your thoughts on that?
I actually think a weekly stand-up as a report out from myself and all the managers would be helpful for the department to stay aligned and be able to recognize any issues that might be creeping in. Definitely. So they can be dealt with. That way there's more transparency and the flow of work is better known. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, increased one-on-ones with you. I think weekly would be good at this point to really just help you get on track and make sure the casino program gets on track and you and Chris are able to are functioning well as a leadership team, and also to make sure you're hiring of the 2 new programmers to keep that on track. And along with that, like I said, I think the professional coaching, probably weekly sessions would be very beneficial to you. For me with the professional coach? Yeah. Okay, and then I can check in with the coach maybe every other week and get feedback as to suggestions of how I might be able to help you better, or if he or she has suggestions for peer mentorships with some of the other managers. That would be great. So I think with those things and with a conscious effort to evaluate how people perceive you and how people perceive you perceiving them and their ideas, so that your team is functioning as a team and as a whole. And some of this piecemeal can be put back together.
I agree. I think weekly meetings will be good. I think it'll help me be able to level set and kind of understand where I'm at. So I have two other things that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
First is the salary, and then second is my direction in the organization. Right. So first, salary. I know that I'm a bit more underpaid than the rest of the team by probably, I think that's roughly 15%. And that to me kind of builds a hierarchy of import on the management team, the supervisory staff. Understanding that I'm inexperienced, clearly by my managing of the casino game up until this point. Understanding that, I'd like to get up to the same levels as at least the next lowest paid peer, providing that I am able to hit specific KPIs over a time period of 6 months or something like that. I want to be able to do that to, number one, make myself more of a peer with my other supervisory staff, and number two, really build my credibility amongst my staff.
I understand your request, and I have thought about this prior to our meeting, and I think at this point, while you are paid less than some of your peers, it is in line with your experience as well as the products and contributions you've contributed to the company with programs and incoming revenue.
Okay.
And with that, I think this casino project is a great opportunity for you to really establish a foundation for yourself and build credibility and prove yourself, really, because that's what I think your team is, and your peers, really, your managerial peers are kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. And I think that it's going to require a much more collaborative mindset and focus, as well as a strategic vision, which allows you to manage rather than to program and do some of those smaller tasks that we're talking about, and really sticking with the higher level responsibilities. So I think, given everything that we've talked about and the action plan that we're going to have going forward, with some increased guidance from me and feedback, as well as peer collaboration with Chris and his team and your team, and the completion of this project and working with the professional coach will give you an opportunity to really prove your and develop your managerial skills. You have it there. It's just a matter of sharpening those tools.
So do you think that we could come together after the release of Casino, on time release of Casino, after some metrics have been gathered on the ROI of the initial ROI of Casino, and revisit this?
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable.
Okay, great.
It's a great benchmark to use, and we can measure it up against some of the other programs geared towards adult audiences that have been released in the last couple of years to really see how it measures up.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was just my organizational direction. And it probably lends itself pretty well to our conversation here. I really, I've been handling the family games, and that's fine. That's all well and good. It's not my passion. I really want to get more into the adult games. So that's the direction that I'd like to go in my career in the next 18 months or so. So I guess my question I ask of you is, what do I need to do? How do I align myself to be able to do that?
The way you best align yourself to do that is to really execute well on this casino project, because this is essentially the first adult-geared program that you're working on with the company, and everyone is waiting to see how it's going to turn out. And that's really going to be a key indicator of the team's admiration of you, as well as your credibility. So I think that there is a huge difference, that I think, as you're aware now, between the child education market and the adult gaming industry.
Yeah, and I don't think I really considered that too well in the first pass.
And I think it would be wise of you to really spend some time digging into that culture and that mindset, and trying to understand this group of gamers better. You know, what are their interests? What are their hobbies? Why do they game? How long do they game? Why do they like it so much? What are their favorite games? How long do they play those games for? You know, so many things to look at, and really like get firsthand knowledge of that, as well as what marketing has provided you isn't exactly what you need. So I think you should dig deeper. There's so many resources out there online, and there's all sorts of books and conferences. I mean, your peers, I'm sure a lot of them are gamers. You know, they fit that male demographic, a lot of them. So, and whether it's your friends outside of work and your peers, I think it would be a great opportunity for you to strengthen your relationship with your peers, going to them for kind of their interest in the market and their perspective of it. And I think that, you know, depending on what projects are down the road and how this one is laid out in the end, then will determine your future prospects for programming. Is it a possibility? Certainly. Does it mean that you'll never have to work on a children's program again? Not necessarily.
I just want to make sure that it's on the table. Great. Cool. Okay, great. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of get into and discuss with me?
I really just want to make sure you have a key understanding of how your feedback to your team may have contributed to their dissatisfaction and ultimately to people leaving. Just as you felt from your peers, your managerial peers, that you felt separated from, that you felt their feedback was very negative and not very constructive. I mean, what could you do with it? Your team also probably feels the same way. So your method of delivery and your openness to receive feedback has been limited. And, you know, you really have to open that up and recall when you were in that position. You know, how did you best receive your manager's feedback? Constructive criticism, I would imagine. That way you could take it and do something with it. And you don't have, you're not offended by it. You know, it's not delivered in an offensive or insulting manner. And I think sometimes when we're in positions where we feel like we have to prove ourselves, we can default to defense mode, and perhaps that's what has happened a little bit this year for you, being in such a new role and really wanting to succeed. I think, you know, you need to remember these people are good at what they do. You worked alongside of them. Several of you were in the running for the position that you're in. So, you know, there may be a little bit of feelings there. So really take that into consideration and try to establish trust, openness. Like all the things you were saying you also want with the team is what you need to develop with your own team as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
So
I
we'll check
appreciate
in
it,
regularly,
Yeah.
and we'll get you going with that professional coach,
Perfect.
and we'll get started right away. I'll set up a meeting for tomorrow for
Perfect,
you,
yeah.
Chris, and I to talk. And I suggest moving quickly with your team to kind of restore things.
Yeah.
Maybe a retreat.
Yeah.
And it might even be worthwhile having some sort of department retreat similar to last year to kind of regroup
Reset.
on casino. So
That's a good
we
idea.
can discuss
Yeah.
that, you, Chris, and I tomorrow, and
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that would be great for the whole department morale and kind of get people reinvigorated.
Loosened up a little bit and get
Yeah.
all the confidence out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
I can also feel out with the other managers what their teams' workloads are like, and there may be a possibility to relocate or reallocate some of the other projects, so
Cool.
your team and Chris's team can really focus primarily on casino and not
Yeah.
have those side projects going on. So I'll look into that as well and
Great.
have something, hopefully have a response to you by tomorrow's meeting.
Great.
Is there anything else that you need from me or you feel would help you?
No, I think we got, so long as we do all of those meetings as one-on-ones, I think we got that all level set.
Okay.
So, great.
Great.
Well, thank you, Jamie.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.